With it being the week leading up to 3.7, today I'm here with the final 3.7 character guide, this time for Mydei. In this video, I'm taking you over everything you do need to know, including his kit and eidolons, best Lightcone options, best relic sets and Planar ornaments, the stats you want to run for main stat and substat goals, and then some basic team building ideas. I now have a full guide on every single new and returning character in the 3.7 update, so if you're summoning for quite literally anyone, Cyrene, Castros, Hyacine, Tribi, Finon, Cypher, and now Mydei, there is a guide for every single one of them that you can check out on my channel. Mydei is an imaginary destruction character whose basic attack will deal imaginary damage based off his max HP to a designated enemy. His skill first consumes 50% of his current HP, then deals imaginary damage based off his max HP to a designated enemy and an imaginary damage multiplier on the lower side to adjacent targets as it is a blast skill, and if current HP is not sufficient, it will reduce his current HP to 1. His ultimate will restore 20% of his max HP and will accumulate 20 talent charge points, then deals imaginary damage based off his max HP to a designated enemy and imaginary damage based off his max HP as well to adjacent targets. Everyone you hit with this ultimate will also be taunted for 2 turns, so they can only attack Mydei. And the next use of Godslayer Be God will prioritize attacking one designated enemy, and the effect only works on the latest target. His talent allows Mydei to accumulate a point of charge for every 1% HP loss up to a max of 200. Reaching 100 will let you consume 100 points to enter Vendetta's state, which will also restore HP equal to 25% of his max HP and advances his action by 100%. In the Vendetta state, Mydei's max HP will be increased by 50% of current max HP and defense will remain at 0. At the start of this unit's turn, automatically use Kingslayer Be King, so the previous skill is changed to Kingslayer Be King. Reaching 150 points during Vendetta will allow him to immediately gain an extra turn and automatically use Godslayer Be God. Receiving a killing blow during the Vendetta state will instead make Mydei not get knocked down, but will instead clear his current charge, exit the Vendetta state, and restore his HP by 50% of his max HP. So Kingslayer Be King is his enhanced skill, which will consume HP by an amount equal to 35% of his current HP, deals imaginary damage based off his max HP to a designated enemy, and imaginary damage based off his max HP to adjacent targets. You can't actually choose to use the skill yourself. When it's his turn, he will just attack automatically. Godslayer Be God, as it did say, the requirement is 150 points, so once you reach 150 points of charge in the Vendetta state, you will consume it to deal massive imaginary damage based off his max HP, and also same thing to adjacent targets. Ability is automatically used, and while the ability is in use, you cannot accumulate charge. His technique will pull in enemies within a certain area and inflict daze on them for 10 seconds. Dazed enemies do not actively attack allied targets. If actively attacking dazed enemies, entering battle will deal imaginary damage based off 80% of Mydei's max HP to all enemies, taunts the targets for 1 turn, and Mydei will accumulate 50 points of the talent's charge. His A2 will change how Vendetta being knocked down would work. When you are in Vendetta, instead of actually going down and exiting when you die and restoring HP, you straight up don't exit it for 3 times per battle. So going into Vendetta, you have 3 times in battle, where when you get knocked down, instead of actually exiting the state and getting the 50% HP restore as the previous base kit did say, you can actually get up from battle in his state 3 times and stay in the Vendetta state. His A4 will make him crowd control debuff immune in Vendetta, and his A6 when the battle starts, if Mydei's max HP exceeds 4,000, for every 100 excess HP will increase his crit rate by 1.2%. His charge ratio from enemy targets damage increases by 2.5%, and his HP restored when receiving healing increases by 0.75%. Up to 4,000 excess HP is taken into account. Moving on to his eidolons, his E1 will increase the damage multiplier for Godslayer Be God to the primary target by 30%, and will instead change it to a full AoE attack, so it is no longer blast. His E2 will ignore 15% of enemy targets' defense dealing damage in the Vendetta state. Mydei will also now convert healing to charge. 40% of the healed amount will be converted to charge, and the tally of converted charge cannot exceed 40 points, resets the tally of charge after the unit takes action. His E4 will increase his crit damage by 30% and restore HP by 10% of the unit's max HP when receiving attacks when he is in Vendetta. And his E6 will immediately allow him to enter Vendetta state when entering battle, so you do not actually need to get 100 charge to go into it, and will lower the charge required for Godslayer Be God to 100 points. So instead of 150, every time you have 100, it consumes the 100 to launch Godslayer Be God. For Lightcone options, they really haven't changed too much, it's still relatively the same, far and none best one still being a signature Lightcone. Increases wearer's max HP by 18% and incoming healing by 20%. Using skill or ultimate consumes HP equal to 6% of the wearer's max HP and increases damage dealt by this attack by 30%. If this effect's consumed HP is greater than 500, the damage additionally increases by 30%. If the current HP is not sufficient, this effect reduces the wearer's current HP down to 1. As he does scale off HP, getting the 80% increase to max HP is really good, and if you run him alongside a sustain for healing, the 20% incoming healing is also going to be very much felt. It also further increases the amount of HP he does consume since he already consumed some in his base kit. This makes it even better to consume more and will also increase his damage. So damage dealt bonuses are really good, and this Lightcone definitely does help with that, with providing a damage dealt increase of 30% for free. And Mydei also has no problem consuming over 500 HP, granted you do hit the HP required, which also isn't a problem for him because he gets a max HP increase with Vendetta. As long as you have the 8,000 requirement and you go into Vendetta, get that max HP increase, you will have plenty of HP to get the full 60% damage dealt bonus. So it helps significantly for his damage. More HP gives him better survivability and more damage. Incoming healing is also great, and more HP consumed not only helps with the effect of the Lightcone, but also grants him more charge, which is why it is still his far and none best option. Another option you can use is Blade Signature Lightcone, which does provide the wearer 18% increase to crit rate and max HP. When the wearer is attacked or consumes their own HP, their damage is increased by 24%, and the effect is removed after the wearer uses an attack. Crit rate is a lot less desirable on Mydei, but if you happen to have no rolls and you just have a bunch of HP percent and also crit damage, it can be helped. Since he gives himself up to 48%, you have the base crit rate, and one of his best partners is Sunday, it's not really a problem, but if, again, you have really good rolls, then it can be helpful. 18% max HP, of course, going to increase his overall damage and survivability, and you also get 24% damage when using an attack, pretty much because he does consume his own HP, and he also is going to get hit a lot, so the uptime on this can be a bit finicky with how it does work, but since you get hit so much, it practically will always be active. So free damage, free max HP increase, and some free crit rate is why it is a usable option. Another option you can use is the free-to-play Ninja Record Sound Hunt Lightcone, which does increase the wearer's max HP by 12%. When losing or restoring this unit's HP, increases crit damage by 18% for 2 turns, and the effect only triggers once per turn. And at S5, it is 24% increase to max HP, and a 36% increase to crit damage when losing or gaining HP. 24% max HP is a really good buff. At S5, it's better than both Blade and his own signature when it does come to S1. And you practically will always have the free 36% increase to crit damage, as he constantly is consuming his HP. His ultimate can let him restore HP, and if you're running a sustain, that much easier. So it also just becomes a free 36% increase to crit damage. So this is just overall good for his damage and what he wants to do, as it's also permanently up. A Secret Bow is also another usable option, providing a 20% increase to damage dealt, and the wearer also deals an extra 20% of damage to enemies whose current HP percentage is equal to or higher than the wearer's current HP percentage. And at S5, both values become 40%, so up to an 80% increase to damage. As Mydei does consume his HP a lot, he constantly has low HP, so enemies can frequently have higher HP than him. Which makes the full uptime good. But even with just the damage, it is somewhat usable, as I did mention, his multiplier and damage percentage buffs overall are not the greatest. So the extra damage itself is helpful, but having full uptime obviously makes it a lot better. For relic sets, his best in slot is still 4-piece Scholar, providing 8% crit rate. 4-piece increases the damage dealt by skill and ultimate by 20%, and after using ultimate, additionally increases damage dealt by the next skill by 25%. As I did previously mention in the Lightcone section, he does gain a lot of crit rate, so the 8% can make you overcap a bit, or it can help you to a really good build. The 4-piece just increases the main source of his damage, which is skill damage. All his main sources of damage, King Slayer be King, God Slayer be God, are both considered skill, so they get a 20% increase, and then using ultimate will get an increase to that damage and also further amplify the next skill you do. So if you do a setup where you use his ultimate right before getting God Slayer, and then the ultimate gives you enough charge to get God Slayer is going to get that 25% increased damage to get a relatively big damage increase. So this is just amping all his main sources of damage, which is why it is really good. I don't really recommend running Longevious. It does work on him, but I personally would not do it because he just has so many crit rate sources, so I would not bother. So I'm not even going to mention the 4-piece much. But past those, it would be 2-piece 2-piece, so you can do 2-piece in one of the crit sets with 2-piece Longevious because the 2-piece is a lot more valuable than the 4-piece, honestly. 12% max HP, and then combine that with something like Wave Strider for 16% crit damage. Or if you really do just need the 8% crit rate, you can run Scholar or World Remaking Deliverer, as they would work. For Planar Ornaments, the only one you really want to use is the Bone set, which will provide the wearer a 12% increase to max HP. When the wearer's max HP is 5,000 or higher, increases the wearer's and their memo sprites crit damage by 28%. So free max HP increase is great for getting him close to 8,000, and a well-built Mydei is going to want over 8,000 HP anyway, so 5,000 should not be a difficult requirement. So it really just becomes a free 28% increase to crit damage at the same time, which is why overall it is his best in slot, providing 12% max HP and 28% increase to crit damage. You can also use Ritalin Arena, providing 8% crit rate, and reaching 70% or higher crit rate will increase damage dealt by basic attack and skill by 20%. Again, as I mentioned multiple times now, crit rate isn't a super needed stat on him, but if you need help from extra crit rate sources, the 8% can be really good. 70% in battle should not be a problem, as you should have like 100% with him anyways. So it becomes free 20% increase to damage. Basic attack you ignore since you don't use it, so all his skill damage sources, if you use a skill outside of Vendetta, going into Vendetta, Kingslayer, and Godslayer, will get that 20% damage dealt increase. Unfortunately, it doesn't impact his ultimate, but it is fine as it is buffing his main sources of damage. Not as good as Bone set, but is still a usable set. For the main stats on the relics, this can actually really change depending on your own stats and your own roles. So for the body, the two options are HP percent and crit damage. Mydei has a lot of ways to get crit damage already, so if you happen to have really good crit damage rolls, you're running him alongside an action advance that gives crit damage, it can be very good. Since HP percent body can allow you to run a imaginary Planar anyways, which will really help with his no damage percent buffs, as damage percent is really good on him. So if you want to get 8,000 HP through having a HP percent body, you have really good crit damage rolls, and you're running good crit damage supports, then you can actually opt to run a HP percent body, but most commonly, most people will still run crit damage. For the feat, you primarily want to run speed, as you do want to have a -1 setup with him with someone like Sunday or Bronya. So you'd get Mydei to 136 speed, and then your Sunday or Bronya to 135. Or if you are running him with a hyperspeed support, which you can actually work with, such as Sparkle or even a 160 plus Sunday or Bronya, then you can run HP percent boots, as it also helps you a lot with getting closer to 8k HP. For the orb, it depends as well. If you're doing an HP percent body and or HP percent feat, there's potentially a chance you might not need it. If you need more HP and you need to get to 8,000, which will be the case if you're really running crit damage body and also speed boots, usually it will always require you to run an HP percent orb. But maybe you're doing a base speed Mydei where you're running HP percent and that's enough. In that case, you can run imaginary, or maybe you're running an HP percent body. Then in that case, you can also just run an imaginary orb. But if you are not reaching 8k HP with an imaginary orb, then you want to run HP percent orb. And for the link rope, you want HP percent. For the subsets, your first goal is to get your HP percent to 8k before battle. You can't get it to 8k in battle going into Vendetta, it won't activate the full A6. You need to have 8k before going into battle. Past 8k, it isn't wasted, you can still get more as it'll further increase his damage, but 8k is the amount you do need to max out his A6. So first, prioritize to get 8k HP. Past that, if you are running speed boots, you want to make sure you get to at least breakpoint and have him above your Sunday or Bronya for the -1 setup. So if your Sunday is, let's say, maybe 136 speed, you need Mydei to get 137 or a bit higher. If you're running a base speed Mydei with a hyperspeed support, then you can ignore that step entirely. Past that is just crit rate, crit damage, and you can still get more HP. Again, it will further increase his damage. Crit rate, be sure to account for his actual trace. And if you're running him with Sunday, that's an extra 20%. And then for the sets he has, such as 2-piece from Scholar, if you're running Ruland, the 8% from there as well. It's really easy to get to 100% crit rate with him in a battle, so that's going to be a goal, obviously, which is, again, not going to be hard. And then focusing on getting as much crit damage as you can will be good. That obviously changes if you're running a crit damage body or not. If you're running a crit damage body, you want to make sure you have over 200%, as that would be a good amount, and the further you go past 200% is going to be even better. If you're running HP percent, you don't really have to reach 200% either, it's fine. You can just aim to get around 170%, that will be good, and if you still can get it to 200% with an HP percent body, that is really good. For team building options, There isn't a super versatile amount of supports you can use with him, as he is an HP scaler, so HP curse. So first, with the hyper carry, when you are running him as the only DPS on the team, usually a support would be Sunday. Sunday would be one of his best partners, usually always, especially for the -1 setup, or even if you're doing hyperspeed, it'd be great. But if you're doing hyperspeed or -1, you can still use Bronya, and if you're doing hyperspeed only, you can use Sparkle, so it depends on what you're doing. So in my -1 case setup, I will put Sunday as an example here. Another really good option is going to be Tribi, especially E1 Tribi, as all her buffs are really good for Mydei. The alt-type rest pen, making enemies take more damage, and also being somewhat of a sub-DPS on the team as well. And last thought would depend if you're doing Sustainless or Sustain, as Mydei can do Sustainless really well, as he does have 3 revives in his Vendetta state. But for Sustain, really just use whoever you can. You can use Hyacinth, you could use Luocha, you could use Linksha. In my case, I'll just throw on Linksha. So just use whoever is available and your best option there. Something to note is one of Mydei's best teams is going to be with Cyrene, which is going to take over Tribi's spot. Honestly, you can run them together too, but Cyrene will be on his overall best teams. So if you are summoning for Cyrene, that is something to consider. But a general team could look like this. Again, if you're running Sustainless, Ruanmei is also another really good support with Mydei for her damage % buffs. As I did mention, he doesn't have too much damage % in his kit, so the buffs from Ruanmei is very, very good. But then again, you can sub out for who you want. Again, for Sunday, you can put Sparkle for a hyperspeed build, or another -1 setup would be with Bronya, so in my case, I'll just put Bronya as an example here. You can actually use Ruanmei in the spot of Tribi as well, and then your last slot could once again go to a Sustain. And if you want to do Sustainless, you can still throw someone like RMC as well. RMC does work really good. And that is the full Mydei guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for future videos like this, along with all the types of Star Up content. Check the description to join the Discord, and also check out my Archives channel, and I'll see you later. Peace out.